I lived by the seat of my pants, literally.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I hated so much that I am so thankful for now is just not having to live like just every day is just like, oh, what am I going to do today? How am I going to get it today? You know, to wake up and your feet hit the floor and just be okay.
Yeah.
It's like, to me, that's the most rewarding feeling that there is with recovery. Because normally my feet wouldn't hit the floor until I had, you know, a couple grams of heroin in me. And that was just a fact. Mom wasn't getting up until I had drugs.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to The Local Lens, the podcast from the Powell County Health Department and Kentucky Rio. Our show is coming to you from Stanton, Kentucky, a small town nestled at the foothills of Appalachia. And our show is all about sharing perspectives. So we go around gathering as many unique perspectives as we can, and we have them here so that we can all listen and learn what we can from these. So at the end of the day, hopefully we can all see addiction better and from a more whole viewpoint. So on today's episode, we are joined by a peer support specialist named Krista Newton from Irvine, Kentucky, and she's going to join us to take a hard, honest look back. And she shares with us some of the things she's learned. Anyways, let's go on and get into it. I'm your host, Nate Brooks. These are our people, using our voices, telling our stories, because no one sees it like we do. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Krista Newton. I'm 32 years old. I'm from Estill County, Kentucky. I have 5 years of sobriety, and I'm a certified peer support specialist.
Okay, so where do you work as a peer support specialist for?
Mountain Comprehensive Care.
And Krista had just started using when she was 12 years old.
I was always hanging out with older people.
Okay.
Like, I didn't feel like I clicked with the majority of people my age, so I always hung out with older people, and you know, I kind of just followed what they were doing. So when I would see them using and they would offer me to, it really started out as just like, you know, smoking some pot and then maybe drinking every now and then. So I just kind of followed in their footsteps.
Yeah. Did it feel pretty innocent when it was starting out?
Oh, yeah, very much.
Yeah. So when you were around the older kids, were they just like neighbors, or were they with like siblings or?
People that I went to school with.
Okay.
I had an older sister.
Okay.
So I did a lot of the things that she did, which my sister has been passed away for 8 years. We lost her to an overdose.
Yeah. Is that what kind of got you looking into recovery for yourself?
No.
What got you looking into recovery?
Because my addiction had just gotten so bad that I ended up in federal prison. Okay. So I was gone from my family and my kids and everybody. I was gone for 4 years. So I said no more after that. That was like the turning point for me.
So let's go back to the beginning then. So you were starting with pot and drinking. When did it progress to anything more than that?
It wasn't very long after. Probably when I was about 15 was probably about the first time that I actually started to use some kind of pills. Like, it would be, I would start with maybe a Loratab or something because somebody would give it to me, or something like that. And then once I did it and I realized the effect and I seen how it made me feel, then, you know, that's kind of how it works. Once you see how you know, like somebody for me that's like pretty shy most of the time and like not really comfortable in your own skin, like whenever you do drugs, it like kind of just loosens you up. So it allows you to be something that really that you're not, I guess you would say. It makes you just really kind of like carefree in a way. So it was that feeling that kept me doing more.
So if you put yourself in her shoes here, then you're a middle schooler who's already trying to get used to all of these changes going on with your body, and then you're introducing these chemical changes in your head as well. With all this chemical change, you would expect an imbalance. When you look at addiction, do you look at it as a choice or as a disease? Do you have any thoughts on that?
For a long time, I always would get mad and I would be so frustrated whenever people would say it's a choice, because it very, very much is a choice. But at the same time, it is a disease, but you still have the choice. If you stay in active addiction, that's your choice. There's a way out. There's a solution. So if you all you have to do is make that choice that you don't want to live like that anymore, and find a program, a detox, whatever works for you, and make that choice and get out. Yeah, I agree that I used to get mad when people would say, oh, it's a choice. But now that I'm out of active addiction, I look back and I can realize, like, every single thing that got me to where I was one big choice after another. And I just made the absolute worst choices there was to make.
Does it make sense to you looking back why you made those choices at the time? Or does it just kind of astound you that you ever made the choices you did?
It absolutely blows my mind.
Yeah.
That I done some of the things that I did, because I would look at some people before I got in the worst part of my addiction, and I would be like, oh, look at such and such. Oh, she's just doing anything she can to get high, da da da. And then, I ended up being that person that people were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
So what ended up working for you, though? What was your program that helped you with your recovery?
Believe it or not, as crazy as this may seem, obviously Estill County's a small place and there's not a whole lot of meetings. So it's limited to what you can go to here. So I finally found a little bitty AA meeting here in Estill County, and I got sober in AA. I actually had managed once to get clean by myself for 3.5 years.
Nice.
By going to AA, and yeah.
And when was that?
Let's see. It's probably been about 8 years ago.
Okay. So that was before your prison sentence. Okay.
Yep.
So then at the end of that, what caused you to, what happened after that, I guess?
Do you mean as in like my relapse? What made me go back?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I had it in my mind because, I was this single mom, and I was taking care of my kids because I had my kids at that point, and I was struggling instead of, going out and trying to find a real job. I just sit there and was like, well, gosh, I got to do something for money. So I told myself it was okay if I sold some drugs as long as I didn't use the drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked for a little while until it didn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up using and threw away 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm. But then it got you into some other run, at least, where you started looking long term again, I guess.
Absolutely.
Was it specifically just looking at that lost time that made you want to stick with recovery?
Yeah, it was mainly, I'm going to say, it was just basically seeing my kids whenever they seen me sober.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just the happiness, like, I can't explain it because, my kids had never seen us really an actual sober mom who's, like, living long-term recovery. Like,
mm-hmm.
my brain's, like, healed and all that. And now that I see them, they're just so happy now.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've never had that. Like, they've never had mom who is like, hey, let's get up, let's go to Natural Bridge for the day. Or, they've never had things like that. So now they're just, that was my number one. Like, that was my driving factor right there.
Mm-hmm. Was there a specific story that got you to look back into, like, getting sober for them?
Yes, absolutely. When I was in active addiction, obviously I was selling drugs, and one day my little boy comes running through the house, and he said, Mom, he said, the police is on the block. And I said, what? He said, the police are on the block. And he told me, he said, come here and I'll show you where you can hide that stuff. And that was, that there for me was one thing looking back. Like, at the time it was like no big deal, but looking back now is like, how could I even have put my kids in a situation to even know that? Like, kids aren't supposed to know things like that at that age. They just aren't supposed to know things like that, but they did, and they had to grow up really fast because of me.
How old was your boy then?
I'm gonna say he was probably about 8.
Yeah. So, how's he doing now?
He's great.
Yeah.
He has a little mouth every now and then. He's 15 years old now.
Yeah. So there's a long, painful history here. And this interview went really well because she's now looking back and reflecting on it all pretty clearly. And it's helpful for us to hear this from her.
For so long, I was like a ticking time bomb. You never knew what I was going to do. One minute I'd be sober and the next minute I'd be in another state somewhere. My kids, no telling where, with their granny, with whoever would keep them. Nobody ever knew what I was going to do.
Yeah, and I'm including you, I guess.
No.
Yeah.
I lived by the seat of my pants, literally.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I hated so much that I am so thankful for now, is just not having to live like, just every day is just like, oh, what am I going to do today? How am I going to get it today? To wake up and your feet hit the floor and just be okay.
Yeah.
It's like, to me, that's the most rewarding feeling that there is with recovery. Because normally my feet wouldn't hit the floor until I had, a couple grams of heroin in me. And that was just a fact. Mom wasn't getting up until I had drugs.
So what are you up to today? You're a peer support specialist. What's that like?
It's great. I work with people a lot of the people that I work with are people who have mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
I work with also people who are struggling with drug addiction, but the position that I had currently is the population is mainly people with mental illness, because there's not a big population. You all know Powell County.
Mm-hmm.
There's just not a big population that are trying to get help right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough providers.
Absolutely. There's just I don't know what it is. I've not
Maybe a
figured it
mix
out
between both.
because I literally don't. I think I may have 2 people that well, they claim they don't have drug problems, but so I don't know. We can't work on your problem until you admit you have one.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said that, but
Mm-hmm.
till they're ready, it's whatever.
Yeah.
You just gotta let them wear it out.
Yeah.
So that's a question I have, just what you were saying, because I've talked to several peer support specialists who say, like, you just don't pressure, you just listen to them. When they're ready, they're ready. Is that kind of what you do with them?
Yeah. Because no matter how much training or how much knowledge that I have and how much I share my story and, be there for them, encourage them, until they're ready to make that step on their own, there's just nothing that you can do. You just have to let them know that you're there whenever they're ready. You're gonna be there to help them.
Mm-hmm.
They just gotta take the first steps on their own, though. The majority of the clients who have substance abuse also have mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very rarely will you see somebody who has been in active addiction who doesn't have some kind of mental health issue.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's depression, anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
PTSD, the majority of them definitely have some kind of mental illness.
Does that apply to you as well?
Yeah.
Mm. Well, do you feel like you have a grip on your mental health side now? Like, was that an essential thing of going through recovery for you?
Oh yeah. I had to get to a point where I was stable, because depression, anxiety, all of that can be a number one factor in sending you back into active addiction.
Mm.
You can go with untreated depression forever, but when you're in active addiction and you let yourself get to the point where you're super, super depressed, can't get out of the bed, don't want to do anything, that's dangerous. That's very dangerous for me, because if I stay depressed, then my old thinking is, well, I know how I can feel better. So it just you definitely, to me, that's something that was super important. Because whenever I first got out of prison and I came home, I had so much anxiety and depression. Like, I didn't even know how to function around a crowd of people anymore. I had been in humongous crowds in prison population, but whenever I came home, I had to completely retrain myself on how to live around people, because I had lived in such a small, little bitty confined space for so long with just 3 people. It's hard. It was so hard. I had to go see a counselor. I had to get help.
So, just a question for you. When you came back, because you grew up here in Estill County, correct? So, coming back here and being around some of the same people, how is that working for you? Like,
Well, whenever I first came home and I first got back on my Facebook page, I cannot tell you the amount of people who would send me messages and say, hey, I got such and such, you need anything? Or, hey, do you got anything?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing, I just got out of prison for that same thing. So, and my mom would always laugh at me because some of my old friends would send me messages and be like, hey, you want to hang out? And the first thing I would say is, are you sober?
Mm-hmm.
And whenever they would say no, I would say, well, I wish you well, but I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I have to worry about me for once.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of you because the temptation is hard.
It's absolutely hard.
Yeah, working in a MAT clinic at one point, that was one of the biggest relapse. They would come back and their friends would contact them, and instead of saying, like you said, are you sober? And I wish you well, they would go back.
Yep.
And that was one of the hardest things, I think, for them.
Sometimes it's still hard because it'll be somebody, who I spent so much time with, and I'm like, self-consciously, I'm like, gosh, I would like to see them, but then in my head, I'm battling, and I'm like, is it worth it? Like, do you really, really need to see them?
Mm-hmm.
Is it life or death if you see them? No, it's not. Mm-hmm. If it's going to jeopardize myself or my recovery, then I don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just that simple. You have to be like that. And it's so sad because I miss a lot of the people. I miss some of the people. Some I don't miss. Sorry.
That's how
sorry,
life goes.
Not
though.
sorry.
Yeah. Sometimes you're just around people because they're around. It's a part of it.
Yeah, it was about what you could contribute. And if you couldn't contribute nothing, then I just didn't need you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sad.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense, but does it feel selfish now, looking at how you have to carry yourself for your recovery?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
And I've been called that like a couple times by people when I'm like, so are you sober? And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I just can't do such and such for you. I can't give you a ride to the store or whatever. And they'll be like, you think it's not really that I'm selfish. They say that I think I'm better. I think I'm better than them. And anybody who knows me knows, like, I'm the most humble, down-to-earth person ever. I definitely don't think I'm better than you. I'm just thinking of my sobriety, my future, and it's just not worth the risk.
So have some of your friends almost followed you into recovery at all? Or
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. A couple. I have a really close friend, and as a matter of fact, we were in prison together. And because I'm on federal probation, we're not allowed to be around each other. But in AA meetings, we can still see each other, and she'll still call and check up on me and the kids and message. But whenever she first got out of prison, I had been out for a while, and she reached out to me and she was like, I need somebody who's sober and who's living this life, because I need help. And at that time, my PO actually gave us permission to be around each other. So I tried. I done everything that I possibly could to help the girl, and she finally got sober, and she's doing good now.
That's great.
Good.
Yeah, and it makes me happy because she will tell anybody, like, I was what made her want to be sober.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, cheers to that.
Yeah.
That's great. I have 3 questions.
Oh, 3?
3 questions, yeah. But we're pretty close to good on time. We are good on time for sure. So I'm going to have to cut stuff out. But, like, these are questions that, like, I'm excited to hear your answer on these. So,
okay.
Because going
you
back,
might not be once you hear the answer.
and if you don't want to answer, that's totally fine. I get it. So we were talking about earlier how good it feels to just wake up and be okay with that, like be able to put your feet on the floor and be good with that. So calling back to that, do you get worried at all ever that you'll get bored of that someday? Because if nothing else, then like living like on the run seems exciting. Like, I mean, like hectic as anything, but like.
Yeah. I do. I think about it a lot, actually. Like, because, you know, being a single mom with 3 kids, that's hard.
Mm.
And, you know, you have to wake up and like, all of your time is put into taking care of these kids. And, you know, it was so easy whenever, you know, I just didn't care and I didn't have to take care of anything and just did what I wanted all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you said, like, that life of living on the edge is, you know, for some people that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't even need the drugs, they just seek those thrills, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think I was as much addicted to that part
Mm-hmm.
as I was the actual drug, because I do worry, you know. I think about it all the time. I'm like, gosh, I just don't ever want to just be so complacent that I have to use drugs again.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to keep the main thing for me, and this is what a lot of people have asked me, what is something that's important to you to stay sober? And for me, it's, and I learned this from the peer support specialist that I worked with whenever I was first getting sober, is just getting some kind of routine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as simple as like getting up and making your bed that morning.
Mm-hmm.
It just gives you like this little routine, and just keeping yourself busy. Like, don't sit around all the time with absolutely nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, find things to do. Get up, do stuff with your kids. You know, try to make the day as meaningful as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
You know, working, that's something that is really, really good because it keeps you busy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that much time to sit and dwell on other things.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I do worry about it.
Yeah.
A lot.
So cheers to Krista for answering that question. That must be a hard thing to think about and to recall. But the next question is much easier than that, much lighter, much more lighthearted than that. Are you a fan of any prison movies or TV shows or anything?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny that you said that. Me and my nieces, God love their heart, I lost one of my nieces to suicide. She was going to be 19 years old, so rest in peace, Brookie. But anyways, me and my nieces used to watch Orange is the New Black.
Mm-hmm.
And they always would say, Aunt Critter, if prison's like that, then I want to go. I came home from prison, and they were grown. They were grown up then. I said, girls, Prison is nothing like that show.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing like that show. You do not get to do all those big fancy smancy things that they showed. There is no greenhouse that you can bury bodies under. No, none of all that. None. Absolutely not. Now some things like the actual like the shows, what is it called, where they actually show like things where the prisoners are locked up and like help me out, what are they called?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Is it a TV show?
Yeah,
yes,
is.
it's like the actual
Mm-hmm.
shows where they're showing
like
the prisoners in prison.
almost like documentary
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Now
yeah.
that's real life. The
Yeah.
things you see in that,
Yeah.
that's real life.
Yeah.
People getting hurt, getting stabbed, all the fighting. Sometimes prison guards doing things they shouldn't do. That's real life.
Mm-hmm.
But now, Orange is the New Black. No.
It's just a facade.
It's definitely. It's a very funny one, but no.
Yeah.
So, kids, if you think Orange is the New Black is cool, don't try prison.
Don't try it. That's not what you'll get.
You're going to be real disappointed. Yeah.
Anything else here? Do you have any closing thoughts that you want to give out to people other than the beautiful Orange is the New Black is not the truth?
Yeah, I just want people who are in active addiction and they're afraid to take that step. You know, I want people to know there is a solution. You know, I started whenever I was about 12 years old, and, you know, it took me till, you know, I'm 32, and I've just now managed to get some years of sobriety. You know, but there is a solution. You know, I just want everybody to know there is a way out. You know, and even if you feel like you can't make it, you know, just hold on, because good things will come.
Well, that's all the time that we have today, guys. Thank you for listening to our show, The Local Lens. Once again, we're coming to you from the Powell County Health Department and the CARES Project there, as well as the Coach Project from Kentucky Rio. I want to give a huge thank you to Krista Newton for coming on to our show and for bravely and confidently standing up and answering all of these questions that we had for her. It's definitely a courageous thing to do, and we really do think that it's reaching people. So let us know if you're getting this content and if you're receiving this. Also, thank you to Leandra Knox for being in the room and asking some questions on this episode. And thank you for your contribution and for all the help that you do with this show. It means so much to me. Thank you so much. And also thank you to WSKV for broadcasting our show, and Ethan Moore for making everything make sense with all of this stuff. I really appreciate it. So I know that we ended this episode on a pretty lighthearted note, but I hope you guys are thinking back and remembering all of the heavy ground that we covered on this. She really walked us through a lot of different sides of her experience, and she answered some tough questions for us. So let us know what you're thinking. Let us know how you're responding to all of this. Find us on Facebook at The Local Lens. But yeah, keep listening. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is The Local Lens, and I'm your host, Nate Brooks. These are our people using our voices, telling our stories, because no one sees it like we do.